Hi friends, I'm Phil and I'm a poet just like you. Good news today, fellow poets. We're about to get wild. Today's show is all about having no rules. No rules, no rules, no rules. We can go transparent. We can make everything go green if we want to. That's kind of cool. Wait, how do I turn it off? Oh, there we go. We can even spin upside down if we want to. Oh, it's working! We're still gonna treat all poets with the respect they deserve, of course. But we can sit how we want, do what we want, and wear anything we like. What do you think? It's time for anything on today's episode of Poet Show It. I'm a poet. You're 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 a poet. So come and show it. You're a poet. One of the things that I love about poetry is that there really aren't any rules at all. You don't have to write in complete sentences. You don't have to use punctuation or capitalize the first word. If you want to write words all over, repeat the same word over and over again, right upside down, whatever you want to write is totally up to you. The only goal is to say what you want to say. But you might want the things you say to make sense to other people. And if you do, there are tools in poetry, patterns and choices that other poets have used successfully that can help you communicate. These tools can be as simple as using letters, writing in straight lines, or more complex, like using repetition or rhyme or meter or metaphor. Rules are things that you have to do, whether you understand why or not. Tools are things that help you do something well, and it's good to understand them so you know how to use them effectively. There are no rules in poetry. No rules, no rules, no rules. But there are some great tools. Our four poets today each used a poetry tool really well, and we'll talk about each one when we see it. So, let's get started. Poem number 1. Pop's Penguin Picture by KC. KC is in Ms. Price's class at Stadium Drive Elementary. It's not going to take you very long to figure out which poetry tool KC used. In fact, from the title, you may have figured it out already. Picture a person's premonition of the past. Pop was playing puzzles at my place. Pop said it would be a pleasure to make a picture. So Padre and I provided pencils plus paper. Pop perfectly positioned his posterior in my pink and periwinkle with purple polka dot chair. Pop produced a picture of perfect penguins. This poem is super fun to read. Casey uses some great descriptive words, and can you tell which poetry tool was used? Alliteration is when two or more words that are near each other use the same consonant sound. So what's a consonant? Oh, I don't know. Maybe P? Pop was playing puzzles at my place. Pop said it would be a pleasure to make a picture. So Padre and I provided pencils plus paper. Pop perfectly positioned his posterior in my pink and periwinkle with purple polka. So many P's. And some of the words she uses, like pink and periwinkle with purple polka dots, or using the word padre instead of pop for one of the lines, is a really good example of how sometimes when we use certain tools in our poetry, it can help us think a little bit more deeply about the words we're choosing. It's a perfect poem, and I love the picture of penguins. Casey should be really proud of the plentiful peas in this particularly playful poetry performance. Casey, thank you so much for sharing this poem with all of us. Poem number 2. My Playset by Parker. Parker is in Ms. Cardinal's class at Stadium Drive Elementary. In My Playset, Parker uses a different poetry tool. One I'm sure you're all very familiar with. Let's see if you can pick it out. I have a playset in my yard. I protect it like a guard. I like to go on the slide. I go so fast that I glide. When the day is done, I've had so much fun. Parker does a great job of describing his amazing playset and some of the ways he likes to play on it. And did you notice which poetry tool he used? A perfect rhyme. I'm sure you're familiar, but a rhyme is when two words sound the same. A perfect rhyme is when two words sound exactly the same except for the first sound. Parker has 3 great perfect rhymes in this poem. Yard and guard, slide and glide, and done and fun. Rhyming can be a lot of fun because it can give your poems a very playful quality, which is perfect for this poem. I love all of his word choices, and Parker also does a great job of ending the poem in a place that makes sense. When the day is done, I've had so much fun. It gives a great sense of closure to the poem. Great poem, Parker. Your playset sounds amazing. Your poem is amazing, and thank you for sharing it with all of us. Poem number 3. Our Pet by Sydney and Rachel. Sydney and Rachel are in Ms. West and Ms. Needing's classes at Carpenter Elementary. I love that these two wrote a poem together. There is no rule that says you have to write a poem all by yourself. While the first 2 poems utilized poetry tools that have to do with the sound the words make, there are other kinds of poetry tools too. In the dark, her eyes look like tiny pennies without pictures. She is like a vacuum. She eats anything that is on the floor. She can be like a mini jackhammer when pawing her bed, or like a shark when she wants attention. Sometimes she is a barking, smelly monster with sharp claws who does the zoomies through the house. Other times, she is a calm, furry, fuzzy, snuggle buddy to play and share thoughts with. No matter what, she is our puppy, Ash. I love this poem. I know all about having a puppy and the different personalities they can have and different moods they can have. And this poem does an amazing job of describing them. Did you notice the poetry tool that Sydney and Rachel used here especially well? Simile is a phrase or figure of speech that describes something by making a direct comparison to something else. Often you'll see the words like or as, but not always. Sydney and Rachel used multiple similes throughout this poem. Let's count them. In the dark, her eyes look like pennies without pictures. She is like a vacuum. She eats anything that is on the floor. She can be like a mini jackhammer when pawing her bed, or like a shark when she wants attention. 4 similes. Each one paints a really vivid picture of something the puppy Ash is doing, pawing at her bed or eating food off the ground. It's a great structure of a poem where they start with very specific descriptions and then get more general and then finish the poem by telling you exactly who they're talking about. It's really well structured, easy to follow, fun to read, and full of amazing imagery. This is an incredible poem. Sydney, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing it with me. And if you two write anything else together, let me know. I'd love to see it. Poem number 4. Fishy by Aaron. Aaron is in Mrs. Backer's class at Beechwood Elementary. All right, we've seen some amazing examples of poetry tools that all have to do with the sounds the words make. And another great example in similes, which is something that has to do with description and specific phrasing. But what about a poetry tool that has to do with the entire poem? Is there anything like that? There is. And Aaron does a great job of using it in this poem. I am a fish. People try to eat me, but I escape all the times. Even though they try, they won't catch me. Ha 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 ha. They can't even catch me, and I am faster than anyone. In a tag game, I won't get tagged. Ha 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 ha. Oops, I was wrong. I got eaten by a shark. This is a hilarious poem. I love the lines of laughter that Aaron uses to break it up. And there are a couple of different poetry tools I can see it used here. The first, which we've talked about before, is point of view. That has to do with the perspective of the poem, or the who's talking. In this poem, it's clearly a fish. A very boastful fish that is pretty sure he can't possibly get caught. But another great poetry tool he uses here is called the twist ending. A twist ending is when you spend the whole poem writing about something and leading your reader down a path of thinking one thing is true, and then the last line or two switches things up and changes what happens or what you meant by the poem in the first place. Twist endings are used in lots of poems, especially humorous ones, but not always. Twist endings can be really powerful when used in an emotional poem. This poem's twist ending works because the fish spent the entire poem talking about how he was way too fast to get caught by a person. People try to eat me, but I escape all the time. I am faster than anyone. And then gets eaten by a shark. This is a great poem, Aaron. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed our lawless time together. In our 4 poems today, we got to appreciate the alliteration of Casey's penguin portrait, enjoy the rhyme and have a good time on Parker's Playset, join Sydney and Rachel for a simile-filled poem that was just like spending time with a puppy, and live the last few moments of Aaron's braggadocious fish. I hope you'll write a poem of your own, and maybe use some of the poetry tools we saw on display here today. If you do, and you'd like to share it with me, and maybe all of us, get your parents' help to go to poetshowit.com to send it in. There's no Poet Show It without a poem to show them. From the Poetry Workshop, I'm Phil. I'll see you next time, and until then, keep writing.